Okay, Chair, we're live on YouTube. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. So good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Poverty Working Panel on Monday, the 18th of November. I'm your chair, Councillor Dan Ledger. I'd like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live stream. Start with some housekeeping. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who's disrupting this meeting by whatever means. Please turn off your mobile telephone devices or switch them to silent. In the event of a break in the internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we're unable to reconnect, we'll consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene it at a later date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. And we'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call. So over to Sarah, our Democratic Service.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself, Councillor Ledger.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott. No. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Goodman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Haggerty. Councillor Heath.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Vixen.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Smith. Okay, now I can confirm that we're correct, Chair, so I'll pass back to you.
Thank you. I'm passing straight back to you. Have we received any apologies for today?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Bethany Collins.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th of June. If there are any members who wish to make a comment, just raise your electronic hand. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I just spoke to Dale Hegarty and he said he's not on this committee anymore, even though he's shown down as being in attendance. I don't know.
Okay, that's something that we can take away and take offline with the Democratic Service officers.
Okay, thank you.
We'll confirm that and we'll bring that back to the next meeting. Okay, so if there are no other further hands, I'll consider those noted. Okay, so we move on to declarations of interest, and again, I'll pass over to Sarah to do a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. So again, we'll start with yourself, Councillor Ledger.
None that I'm aware of at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott. We have Councillor Arnott here now.
Yeah, none, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goodman.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heath.
None that I'm aware of, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
None, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Vixen.
None, thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other councillors in the meeting who want to declare an interest for any of the items on the agenda today, please? Okay, I think there are none, so I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to public speaking. As I understand it, there's no members wishing to speak. So we go into the agenda proper, and agenda item 5, update on work being done to support EDC's anti-poverty strategy. And we're receiving a presentation from Devon Communities Together. So can I pass over to Nora Cockery, who is the CEO of Devon's Communities Together. Nora, welcome to the meeting. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for everybody for allowing us to have some space at your meeting to talk about what we're doing in working with East Devon District Council and a range of other partners around proactively trying to tackle rural poverty in Devon. I do have some slides. I'm hoping that Sarah is going to be able to share them for me. Perfect. Okay. So the work that we are doing focuses particularly on rural poverty, and I'll go into in a minute the reasons why we think it's important to look at rural poverty through a rural lens. Next slide, please, Sarah. I hope that many of you will be aware of Devon Communities Together, but just in case anybody isn't, we are the Rural Community Council for Devon. We're a member of National Network ACRE, which is Action with Communities in Rural England. There's a Rural Community Council in every shire county of England, so there are 38 of us. We're an independent charity, and we're here to really work alongside communities across Devon, primarily rural and coastal, remote rural communities, and to support them in tackling rural insecurities and inequalities, and to support them in having their voices heard, but also practically tackling the issues that are relevant to their communities. And we've been working in Devon for just over 63 years now. Oh, next slide, please, Sarah. I keep going to switch it myself. Since April 2003, we have been under contract with East Devon District Council through UK SPF funding and some match funding that we bring directly from DEFRA to deliver a programme of broader voluntary community and social enterprise sector support. And so that's kind of how we got involved in working specifically around the anti-poverty agenda in East Devon. This infrastructure service is broader, so it's working right across the district with grassroots, voluntary and community groups, and it's providing funding, advice, training, governance, all the things you might expect that the VCSE sector is looking for at this very difficult time, actually, for small charities, very uncertain time. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Why we think it's really important, specifically when addressing the issues of deprivation and poverty in rural communities, is that there are often barriers or additional challenges that are faced by people living in our rural communities. And ACRE, our national network, has kind of identified these as the rural social determinants. So very often, and I'm sure Dean, my colleague Dean here from Citizens Advice would, confirm this, it's very rare that somebody comes to Citizens Advice with one problem. It's usually an interconnected picture of various. Yes. Sorry.
I'm just backing you up, Nora. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much, Dean. Yeah, it's very much often an interconnected picture of lots of, or a number of different issues which have come together to affect or bring somebody or a household into poverty. And I won't go through those all, but you can see, the basic ones around food insecurity, our older housing stock in our rural areas and lack of affordable housing, public transport limitations, lower income levels, seasonal work. All of these are issues which often provide problems for people if they are finding themselves struggling to actually be able to access the support that they need. Next slide, please, Sarah. So we've been doing some work through ACRE with the University of London and the University of Norwich, and it all started from recognizing and it being recognized from an academic basis that the indices of multiple deprivation, or IMD, which are used across government and all departments to identify regional or geographic areas which have high levels of deprivation. And it has now been well recognized by our academic partners that the indices of multiple deprivation, actually the scores, because areas get scored on various indicators, disguise pockets of deprivation in rural areas. So that we know that there are barriers and additional challenges for people living in rural areas, and that they have different needs. But actually, what often happens is there is a mismatch between the resource that is available to actually work with people living in poverty in rural areas, because very often national government funding is based on IMD, and the target communities will be the target communities which score in the highest deciles. And so these pockets of deprivation, which we are very aware that there are locally and across East Devon, often the needs of those people aren't addressed or identified or met. Thank you. Next slide, please, Sarah. So this is just a quick look from the Devon Health and Wellbeing Board, where they pull together all the open source data they can, which includes IMD and is heavily reliant on the IMD, to look at how deprived parts of the county might be. So when you look at East Devon, you see the problem is that if you look at the little pointers, they're all on the kind of this side of the graph, which means that the least deprived side. And so what that means is, in terms of targeted funding and resources, these areas of E7 which do have, where we have what they call pockets of deprivation, get overlooked. Thank you. Next slide, please, Sarah. So there, we know this bias is there. It's been accepted that it's there, there are some. The work we've been doing over the last few years, as I said, with the University of London and the University of Norwich, is looking at from an academic perspective, because obviously the indicators have to be completely backed up by robust academic formula and evidence. Is it possible to produce some additional rural weighting? Because we did actually at one point hopefully talk to DEFRA about possibly the IMD being completely kind of reviewed and rejigged, and that we were told very firmly that wasn't going to happen. So, okay, we're left with, how can we try and adapt the system we have to identify deprivation to at least introduce some rural weightings into it? So that's what the universities have been working on. So they've been working on looking at giving more weight in the scoring to some of the measurements that disproportionately affect rural communities. So access to services, transport and housing would be top key ones. And there is some work, the work we did with universities has been presented back to DEFRA, and at a National ACRE conference just a few months ago, we were told by DEFRA that this is something that they are actively looking at through their rural proofing team, which is very, very positive news. But these things don't happen quickly, but it's a step in the right direction. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please, Sarah. This just gives you an idea of the work that the universities did. I have lots more detailed information if people are interested, but just for the purposes of this morning, they did a trial where they added the new rural weightings onto the existing IMD indicators, and then they remapped. And this is the Devon map. They did it in Lincoln, Norwich, and Devon, because we were part of a national working group with organisations from those three areas, so that you can see in East Devon, so you can see those green areas, is that when they applied the rural ratings, they went down, the score, the deprivation score went down. So they were able to identify more deprivation than they would have done. And actually 31% of rural lower super output areas on the map moved 2 or more ranks in a more deprived direction. So, as I said, the academic stuff is there. It's a case of bringing it into government policy now. And thank you. Next slide, please, Sarah. Devon County Council, with partners, have had also started to try this approach of bringing in different indicators to give a more accurate picture, and they did it with the cost of living dashboard, which is available on the health and wellbeing website. So they brought in indicators specifically around levels of fuel poverty, relative child poverty, food poverty, as well as the more traditional ones, so benefits claimants counts and the standard IMD rankings. And so it was a really good and positive attempt to actually try and uncover some of this disguised need. Councillor, I see you had your hand up. Would you
Yes, I'm really sorry. Thank you. Is that me?
Ellen, I've got Ellen.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question about that. So I'm very surprised not to see any parts of Cranbrook in the deprivation scores. Is that because Cranbrook is better off, or is that because it's coming under somewhere else?
This is a snapshot from the dashboard. So okay. I don't know. It might be just that it doesn't appear on that list. But if you go onto the health and wellbeing website and put in an area, and what they've got will come up. So
thank you.
This was the overall East Devon, and these are the priority areas that came up.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, but it's a really good start, and it shows that in Devon we're being proactive and we are recognising that there are additional factors that, you know, we can't just rely on the same old government data if we want to be proactive in our communities. Okay, next slide, please, Sarah. Well, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, Dean, but there was a brilliant report which Citizens Advice produced as earlier in the year, and I won't go through it in detail because Dean is here himself, but it was striking. It was striking. It's an excellent report, and it told us that from their really good and robust information system, that 80,000 people living in Devon have more money going out than coming in every month. Negative budgets is really on the increase, where what people need to spend out on basic living costs exceeding the household income. And the report is available. I'm sure Dean will tell you where you can read the full report. But
I'm going to try and share it in the chat.
Excellent, thank you, Dean. But basically, what the report did find is that they produced a sort of a red index of debt, looking at rising debt levels. But they also have found that energy costs and housing costs are the key costs that are pushing many of our households, low-income households, into the red and into trouble. Okay. And I'm sure Dean will tell you more about that later. So coming on to kind of what are we doing? What are we doing about all of this? Because it's a very fine to be looking at the sort of wider system stuff. So we wanted to be proactive. We started working with Libby and Sharon and their teams at DCT. We came together. So obviously them from the district council looking at revenues and looking at poverty, and us providing support for the sector across the district. And we recognise that providing additional financial resilience support into rural communities is crucial. And when we had the Local Government Association peer review earlier in the year, it was really great to see that they particularly commended the work of East Devon in this area in the local government peer review, and that they particularly recognise that we are recognising the importance of bringing people together. Because the other thing about poverty, as I've just said with the thing about people going to the bureau, it's never just one thing. It's a domino effect, and one thing can cause something else, and that can cause something else. And so it's about how, and what we want to avoid is people having to go from here to there to there to there to try and sort one problem out, the larger problem out. So it's about how can we come together, public sector, local council, voluntary sector organisations come together and actually see what we can do working together in a rural area to actually, you know, address some of these issues. And we want to work alongside our rural communities to really understand, because one of my colleagues in ACRE always says, if you've seen one rural community, you've seen one rural community. And I think there's a lot of truth in it. It's about what is going on in that community and what the particular needs are and what assets they have, actually, what the strengths are as well that we can build on. And so that's the whole idea around the financial resilience pilot project that we have started in East Devon. Next slide, please, Sarah. I won't read all of those out, but you can see we've got very fixed project aims and objectives about how we're going to do, and that we're going to work together to understand and address rural poverty. And then what we want to do, most importantly from this pilot, is take the learning so that it can be scaled up across the district. We'll start in one place and test the approach, and then we want to be able to scale it up. Next slide, please. Somebody said, they wanted the website addresses at the bottom. I will share hopefully Sarah will share these slides with you all, so you'll have those. Okay, so we decided we're going to do, it was very important to do a place-based pilot, very local, very rural, and we have brought group together. So we brought a number of partners together, and we started thinking about what a place-based pilot might look like. And the aim is to really understand what's going on in the community, what the needs are, and how we could work together to meet them better using a collaborative approach. all about partnership working and working across the system. So taking a whole system approach to a community, which is unusual, sadly. We decided we very much wanted to use an asset-based approach. So it's not about us parachuting in and saying, oh, you know, we think we can solve your problems. It's about sitting down in the community, listening to the people, finding out, you know, what their ideas are and what they think would help. And then, as I said, hopefully take the learning and scale it up to other areas, we hope. Next slide, please, Sarah. So we've started off, the partnership has come together and we've started to meet, and we started off by looking at our evidence. So talked about the citizens advice evidence earlier, the cost of living dashboard, that all of the data that we have. So we wanted to have an evidence-based approach. We wanted to absolutely look across the system. So not just housing, not just transport, not just access to jobs, not just, you know, food poverty, but to actually bring partners in so that we are joining it up. We're joining it up. And that's the key thing about this work. And that we want to be able to be, as I said, working on the ground to support local community-led action, which will be sustainable, so that when we've stopped actively working there, things will be in place that weren't in place when we came. That's the hope. Next slide, please. So that you can see, this isn't probably all the members, but it's the members that I could get the logos for. So we're putting together a group with all of the key stakeholders and the people, the organisations that people do often go to or come across when they need help. And we're going to actually bring all our resources together in one rural community to start off with. Thank you. Next slide, please, Sarah. So just sort of where we are. So we started all of the scoping work at the beginning of the year, sort of engaging with partners. We worked sort of in the first part of the year in looking at the evidence, as I said, scoping what we were going to do, kind of finessing our approach. In September, we had the first formal meeting of all of the partners, and we started looking at where we might, you know, we looked at our data and where we might work. In September, there was a residents and stakeholder survey launched by the council to bring in additional intelligence and insight into the work. And then last month, we had our second meeting where we kind of had it down to a short list of communities that we think we would be able to start the first pilot in. And we're just now engaging in conversations with those communities, just because obviously this is about the community need to want us to come and work with them. So it's a conversation that needs to be had before we absolutely decide on the first pilot location. Next slide, please, Sarah. So we'll be establishing links with local grassroots organisation and groups. There are some partners that we have kind of we feel that there are still gaps in our partnership, and so we're working on bringing those in. And that particularly includes local businesses. We absolutely want this to be across the system, and we want to work. We're really, really hopeful that we will get local employers involved in this work. We're going to co-design whatever the activities, program activities are with the communities. There will be a community steering group which will lead all of the activity that happens under the pilot, and will all of the feedback and the learning will go initially to the community steering group. There's lots of other good work going on across the country, although I do think East Devon is a trailblazer in this respect, bringing this kind of multi-agency, place-based approach. I think, you know, you should take credit for that. But there is some interesting work going up in Ilfracombe with the Poverty Truth Network, which has been established up there. And we're definitely making links with that. And we want to sort of learn from that as well. And as I say, what we want to do at the end, as well as have left that community more sustainable and more financially resilient than it was when we got there, to bring the learnings back to you and hopefully, you know, look at the potential for scaling up the model. Next slide, please, Sarah. That's it. So thank you for listening. And we're very excited. We're very excited about this work. It's something a lot of us have been wanting to do for a long time. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could I ask a question? Is that all right?
Just 2 seconds, Simon. Just
Dan.
Ian was had his hand up first.
Go for it.
So we'll just go with Ian first, please.
Hello, thank you very much. Sounds very interesting and great work, obviously. Which community did you pick in the end, please?
Well, we're not quite there yet. We've got a very short, and we haven't finally made an agreement with the community yet. So I don't know if Libby or Sharon wants to give any further information, but I don't know whether we're in a position today to say any more.
Libby, please jump in.
Yeah, I think we need to speak to that community first to assess their appetite in this work, and then we will happily share that with members. We have got 2 areas that, if there isn't that appetite, we've got a second area. Both have got that common agreement across our partners, so we are ready to go. But I think it's probably a little bit early to share that with this group yet, but we can do shortly. Thank you.
Okay, so what is the time scale on that then? So if we haven't picked it, I know we've been doing this for 6 months or more, whatever. So, but we are almost at that stage. But what is going to be the time scale to actually sit, and when will we hopefully have some figures back to see what difference we are making if we can roll this out?
Shall I answer that, Libby? Yeah. So it's open-ended at the moment because we recognise that this isn't, this is something that it's going to be a process working with the community. In terms of bringing some learnings or data from the pilot back to you, we absolutely will be able to bring you something significant by the end of March. There may be an interim update we might be able to give you in the new year, because by then, all being well, we will have started on the ground working with the community, but certainly by the end of March. But we deliberately haven't set an end line on this pilot because it is learning, it is experimental, and we will move at the pace of the community.
Councillor Ball, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I look forward to the next meeting to see what we've got coming on. Cheers.
Fantastic. Okay, Councillor Smith, apologies. We come to you.
No, that's all right. That's fine. I was struggling to find my hand up button. So, Nora, just a couple of things I just wanted to flag up. I'm always a little bit nervous. I work in a community role within the district, and so I always get a little bit nervous when we go from kind of this approach. We've done a really kind of data driven, which is great. You find out all the bits of information you need. I'm kind of 11 months into a pilot scheme myself in Axminster, where you may be aware of, but we've been working with families from 0 to 18, and with lots of the partners that you mentioned, including DCC, EDDC, and NHS, DWP, and kind of hit the ground running like that. And we've now been able to roll that out across the Axe Valley. And I wondered whether there was any learning you thought could be picked up on from some of the stuff that you've done already that could help, because we've decided to kind of go grassroots first. So the grassroots are kind of doing the legwork stuff, and then we're very, very well supported. And it only works because we're well supported by the other organisations giving up members' staff time to come and meet every couple of weeks to talk family by family. I wondered if you had any any input from some of the stuff you were seeing from the study, or whether that's something that has legs to be able to be utilised across the district more widely.
Well, firstly, it sounds really interesting, the community-based work that you're doing, and it's really good to hear that you're doing it. In terms of cross-learning, I think absolutely, this is all about learning. This is this way of working is different for us all, I think, in terms of coming together around a place specifically. And so I think absolutely sharing the learning. if there's any, I don't know if any of the DCT East Devon VCSC team are involved in your programme or are able to give you any support, because if not, I'm sure we could see whether that might be able to be possible. And in terms of the data we have, just as the Rural Community Council, if you do, I appreciate that you're starting with the community from where they're at, listening to community, and that's I absolutely applaud that. But if you do want any help with us in terms of some of the data sets that we've got, we can have a chat outside the meeting. We're very happy to chat with you.
Okay, no, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm just really keen wherever I get an opportunity to make sure that the actual, I think from Ian's question, I can sense the urgency to get action. And actually, I'm keen not to get bogged down with it. I think the temptation, isn't it, to always ask the questions and to do the deep dive and to bring up all the data, and actually then you kind of get caught up in the weeds a little bit in terms of implementation. And so we've kind of, I would love to share the learning from both sides, and so that we can kind of work more closely together to actually produce something that I think has been fairly successful over the last 11 months, but could be rolled out beyond the family mechanism that we put in place to support. And we do support other tenants in other ways, but that actually the mechanism which you talk about, where you do joint partnership working, is very successful. And we'd be looking to work out how that could work out, where you have a physical space with agencies working alongside each other, which is something that we pitch more widely, because I think there's value to that too.
Absolutely, and that's the kind of vision, really, is that one place in a rural community where a lot of people can go and get lots of different, needs addressed. That's kind of where we're going. That's the direction. But it sounds like you're doing brilliant work, and I'd love to hear more about it. And if we can share some of the learning of your approach and what you've achieved already, and build it into the work we're doing, I think that would be fantastic. And it's an example of that joining up and connectivity, isn't it? So that's great. Let's definitely have a conversation outside of the meeting.
Thanks, Nora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Martin, can we come to you next, please?
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions. Very quick one to start with. The university that you work with, University of London's group of universities, was it the School of Economics?
Yeah, it was Birkbeck, I think, School of Economics. I've got the academics, Councillor Martin, so I can, if you want to contact me, I can share the research that we have with you, more detailed research.
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you. And then another question I had, and it would have been great to have, I know it would be good to have it afterwards, your presentation, but it would have been really good to have it beforehand as well, because it would help me phrase this question probably a bit better. You were talking about the IMD, which is the Index of Multiple Deprivation, and then you looked at that in Devon and applying a weighting and to see what the result would be. Is that correct? Yeah.
So the universities of London and Norwich came up with a sort of prototype rural weightings, and there was a kind of a working group which is made up of people, organisations from Lincoln, Norwich, and Devon. And they mapped using their kind of prototype weightings those three counties.
Okay, so my question was, there were some areas that went upper decile.
Yeah,
how you pronounce it? But there were several areas that went down, which was surprising. Why was that, please?
The academics found, it was interesting actually, the academics found of the three, they were most surprised by the Devon ones because it had more of a mixed result. In Lincolnshire and Norwich, it wasn't so mixed. So I don't know the answer to why, but that's the way the research came out. But I think overall, what we were able to do, it was a bit of an anomaly. It's well spotted that the Devon, there were mixtures in the kind of the impact it had applying the rural weightings. But overall, they were able to present enough of a case together for DEFRA to actually say, okay, this is something we should be looking at. But yeah, and I think Councillor Smith was saying, data is data, isn't it? It tells us we need to work from a database evidence, because we have to use the information we have, but actually, I think not to be absolutely data led, but to be aware of the data and the flaws in the data that we're using. But yeah, very well spotted.
Well, I almost thought it was almost even in a way.
If you look at East Devon, some went up and some went down.
Because the blue dominates, but there was a lot of the yellow, which is where it had gone down, and that was surprising, I thought. But thank you.
And we were surprised by it, and so were the academics. But it was the data that they used when they did that exercise. That's how it came out.
Nora, can I just add a quick point to that with the IMD?
Yeah.
It is a problem for us in East Devon specifically because the large grant giving bodies will eliminate people before they even get a chance to apply if you don't have the suitable range of IMDs in your district.
Yeah.
And we have very few areas in the whole of the region which are in like the top 50 in Devon.
Yeah.
So when we're competing nationally for grants, we just don't even get into the game. And yeah, it's a real problem for us, this measurement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Nora, can I just ask a question? On one of the slides you put up, it listed a number of different areas. So I saw Seaton Cricket Ground there, a few areas within Axminster, but just underneath it, it said in 2022 there was a 0% £0 worsening. I just wanted to query that figure because it literally said £0 and then 4p per week or something like that.
That was to do. I mean, I'm not an academic, but from my understanding, when they explained that they were trying to build in differences in terms of government policy affecting some of the things they were measuring. But we don't have the academic response, but I can certainly find out more about that. But my understanding was it was a kind of a weighting thing within their experimental mapping. But I can certainly find out more detail about that, Councillor Ledger, if you would like it.
Thank you. If there's no other further questions, Nora, can I just thank you for your presentation and your time today? Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So moving on, just pulling up my script. We're moving on to the update on pension age take-up campaign. And that's a presentation from Citizen Advice East Devon and our Finance Resilience team. So can I hand over to Sharon Church, our Finance Resilience Manager, and Dean Stewart, the Citizen Advice East Devon CEO.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So we wanted to update the panel on the work that's been happening on the take-up campaign for our residents of pension age. And Sarah, I think you were going to present for me, if that's okay. Thank you. So on the benefit service plan for this year, there was a take-up campaign for housing benefits and council tax reduction. If you could move to the first slide, please. Thank you. And that was due to us seeing a sustained drop in our pensionable age caseload over the previous years. We know that sometimes residents who reach pension age don't know of the benefits available to them when they retire, or there's a change in their circumstances, or they don't know where to go to claim. As I'm sure all panel members know, there was the announcement that the winter fuel allowance for those not getting an eligible benefit, such as pension credit, would stop this winter. There are a number of pensioners across the country who are entitled to pension credit but not receiving it. And the DWP contacted local authorities asking for their help to promote pension credit to ensure that as many people as possible claimed what they were eligible for. We've also got the rise in the energy prices, and we know that there's going to be a number of pension age residents who are going to worry about putting the heating on this winter. And of course, if pension credit is awarded, those households will get the winter fuel allowance. So with all that in mind, we combined take-up campaigns for all three benefits. And as we work with Citizens Advice, on our day-to-day work, we had discussions with them about linking up so that we could reach as many residents as possible between us and Citizens Advice, who very kindly took on helping residents with their application forms if they didn't have anyone else to help them. So we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as well as making sure we reach as many people as possible across the whole of East Devon, we also wanted to make sure that we consider our rural areas where residents might be a bit more isolated and hearing about what's available to them. And as it is a big area to cover, we knew we needed to ask for help from the communities. So the financial resilience team's been working hard to make contact with as many partners and local community groups as possible to try to increase the take-up of all three benefits, but especially the pension credit by the deadline of the 21st of December. And that's the cut-off date to make sure that they get winter fuel allowance if pension credit is awarded. Next slide, please. So as already mentioned, we discussed and agreed the joint approach with Citizens Advice so we can cover as many areas as possible, and we then make referrals to Citizens Advice for help completing the forms. The benefits team reviewed all of our council tax reduction and housing benefit data and made phone calls to, I think, 221 households, advising them that based on the information we held on our systems, we thought they would be eligible to claim. And at the end of October, we made a second round of calls to the same residents to see if they had made those applications. And out of those 221, we managed to speak to pretty much everyone. I think there was about 17 people we couldn't contact, and we wrote to those people, giving them the information they needed. We've been identifying and contacting external organisations, internal teams and local community groups. We've issued posters and leaflets around the district for pension credit, housing benefit and council tax reduction. And we've been working with the communications team on a media campaign that will continue to run over the rest of November and December. And that's going to hopefully include a press release. It will be in newsletters, articles in parish magazines, and as well as the usual social media posts and promotion on our website. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the financial resilience team have also made contact with town and parish councils. The libraries have been contacted and we've arranged a drop-in session in each library throughout November and December. We've got local community groups we found out about have been contacted, and again the teams will be in attendance at events such as coffee mornings and lunches in the different areas. We've also been in touch with GP practices, across the district, local food organisations, internal departments, and have been working on displaying posters on town and village notice boards and in village shops where there is one. And can we move next? Thank you. So we've started to see a small rise in our benefit caseload from September. We do get the odd week where the caseload drops and then rises slightly again, and unfortunately that happens with due to residents' ages, but overall we are seeing a small upward trend. We will continue monitoring that, as well as looking at how our caseload changes following certain events so that we can see how successful that event was in the driving claims, and that's going to help our learning for future campaigns as well. Can we move on, please. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, when we made that second round of calls to people we'd already rung to see if they'd made applications for pension credit, as we wanted to see why not if they hadn't. And the feedback we got from residents was interesting. The officers were told some of the issues they were having in making those claims. The main issues the residents were having was that they found the online form and wording difficult to understand. There were instances of the online calculator advising people they didn't qualify, but when we looked at it, it said they did. And on speaking to people, it appeared that the residents were using monthly income instead of converting it to a weekly figure, and that was why they weren't actually being told that they would qualify. We had other people who were telling us that they were having to give up on the calls after having to wait for 45 minutes in queues. So all of those people who were having problems and didn't want to push through with their claim, they've been referred to Citizens Advice to help them make those applications. And we have sent that feedback on to the DWP, and I believe that links to a paper form have now been sent out. So hopefully residents will find it a little easier going forward. And I'm going to hand you over to Dean now, who's going to update you on what the Citizens Advice has been doing.
Good morning. Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I think, as Nora was saying earlier, this is an interesting sort of model for what I think we're planning to do with the place-based resilience later on, in that we looked at the size of East Devon and thought, well, we can't possibly get out and meet every person that could qualify. So we've partnered with quite a lot of local groups. So, for example, with Sid Valley Help, Open Door in Exmouth, Ottery Help Scheme, and we've created a very simple checklist for their volunteers. So we've been going around training their volunteers to eliminate those people who really don't qualify. So people who've got private pensions or a very large amount of savings, or they may have deferred their pension for some reason, they wouldn't qualify. So a lot of the volunteers of the local groups have eliminated people, with the idea being the same with the district council. When you find people that look like they might or almost certainly do, then we will talk to them in more detail. The online form is horrendously confusing because it doesn't just ask you for salary, it breaks it down into about 20 possible sources of salary, which when you're looking at it for the first time makes no sense at all. So we found it's been valuable to when people are potentially going to qualify, for someone to actually sit down and go through the process with them. So next page, please. For that reason and a few others, we've the first 3 months of the new Labour administration were fairly busy, but the next 7 weeks, since we really pushed this forward on the pension credit side, we have seen a large increase in the numbers of people we're seeing. So far, we think we've got 17 people signed up, which would generate about £45,000 of extra income over the next year for them, hopefully, if that all goes through. From feedback from the different residents groups, we think we've probably eliminated about 200 people who just were not eligible for whatever reason. So we are finding some of them, and East Devon are referring to us. Sid Valley Help, Open Door, those groups are also referring people, and we think we found 17 so far. Next, please. So just doesn't quite all fit on one screen, does it? So just an indication. The next 2 slides are really a summary of what we've done over the last sort of 5 months or so, broken down into those periods, the first 3 months and then the next 2 months. Because again, the way we operate, I think Nora might have mentioned it earlier, when we ask the question of do you qualify for pension credit, that's always accompanied by, and do you have any issues with housing or debt or benefits or anything else? So even though we're not necessarily securing pension credit for these residents, you'll see we've generated over £500,000 in the first 3 months. And if you can go to the next slide, We've done about 200,000 in the 6-7 weeks since then. So we are helping people find benefits that they're entitled to. We are helping people reduce debt. But we're also talking about a lot of other issues such as housing. We're still getting a lot of immigration questions, family relationships, utility bills, and debt. As you can see, in the last 7 weeks, we've written out 85 vouchers for food banks. So there's definitely still a need out there. And we're doing everything we can to identify that need and help people. So next. I think it's back to Sharon.
Thank you, Dean. So going forward, the financial resilience team have a number of events over the rest of November and into December. They're going to be publicised by ourselves and the community groups to try and get as many people as possible attending. We'll be looking at rural areas to ensure that posters and leaflets are being displayed, and we'll be liaising with comms to continue the promotion of the campaign at regular intervals. And the financial resilience team are continuing to research and reach out to any other groups that could help or might have events going on that we can also attend. And I think that's it for that slide, please. Thank you. So there's a couple of email addresses here if anyone does know of any groups or would like to refer anyone into us. For events, if you know of, if you could let Sam know on the financial resilience team and use either the hardship or citizens advice email for anything to do with individuals, that would be great.
Can I just give a quick shout out to Sam Hicks, because she has been phenomenal. I think most of the things that are listed here Sam has done, and she's been absolutely brilliant.
Great, thank you, Dean. And I think we're happy to open to questions.
Thank you for that, Sharon and Dean. Really, really appreciated. I think to say 750,000 additional funds to go into residents with East Devon is absolutely fantastic. It's a really great work. Councillor Barlow, can we start with you, please?
Thank you, Chair. I was just interested, the 221 households you spoke to and then went back to, can you tell us how many of those have we made a difference to? So in other words, how many of them have got or gained something extra? And also you said about the 45-minute wait on the calls where people give up on, which I quite sympathise with. There seems to be a new way now, whereas if you've waited too long, you can put your telephone number in and then be rung back later on. Do we have that ability? And if so, can we make sure it's put in place? Because I know for one, I think I can wait up to 20 minutes and then before I give up the ghost, I just hang up. But if they have that facility, you can then just put your number in and then people ring back at a time when you are free to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, so the 221 cases that we called, we don't know the outcome of those pension credit claims yet. Pension Service have been behind. There is a waiting period to actually get decisions on them or not. We have seen an increase in benefit applications our side, and I think we'd increased by about 20 the last time I looked last week. So today is the day we run our new figures. They usually run around lunchtime, so unfortunately I don't have those right at this moment to be able to give you, but we can definitely update on how it's had an impact on our side. The 45-minute wait for the phone lines, that's actually the pension credit phone line, not our phone line. But I don't know, Libby, whether you want to come in about whether that's something we can do on our side for our phones or not.
Sorry, if I'm happy to come in. I mean, we don't have those sorts of waits on our calls because we monitor our call wait times. So our performance is way better than that. But in terms of the call wait time. I don't know if that's, Sharon, something you specifically referred back to DWP, our partner liaison manager, so they are aware of it. And we are actually replacing our telephony technology, and we will have new technology, and it will open up the functionality that as a council we can provide around response times, but we don't really have anything. We don't have those sort of long call waits on our calls. We might have periods, but we do have messaging on about that, and we can, if need be, ring people back, and we would offer that service as well.
Thank you very much. It would obviously be very interesting to know how many of those people we have helped. I think that would be interesting, because I know the chair has been on in the last meeting saying that at the end of the day we do lots of talking, but actually getting figures back to see, are we making a difference? That would be really good for us to know that we are making a difference. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Martin, can we come to you next, please?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask, please, if somebody could email me a copy of that poster. Is that possible? Could that happen today?
Yes.
I've got a meeting tonight, and I'd really like to take that along with me and have a talk about this at a parish council meeting. Thanks very much.
Yeah, get that over for you after the meeting.
Thanks very much. That's great.
Could we get it circulated to the whole group, if that's okay?
Yeah,
Thank you.
should I send it to Sarah?
And wider if possible, Chair. I mean, just because they're not here, anyone could take that to their parish meetings, etc.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Heath, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I just wanted to know, what is the benefits threshold before applicants become ineligible for pension credit? There must be a sort of cash sum. Can Dean or Sharon clarify that, please, for singles and couples, please, actually?
I'll send it over to you again so that it's on the back of the checklist, so I won't put the front on there. Usually the cut-off is £218.50 for a single person, which goes up to £332 for a couple. The basic state pension and nothing else will be below that. But what we've found is a lot of people have private work pensions that have put them just over that. But there are other provisos. So if you're registered disabled, if you get attendance allowance or carers allowance, that puts the allowance up. So I think for a single person, it's to £289 a week. As Sharon said, there's been a bit of confusion about weekly and monthly income. You can have up to £10,000 in savings in the bank, and that doesn't affect you at all. And then every £500 you have above that counts as £1 a week. So if you've got £20,000 in the bank, that effectively is £20 a week to go on top of your pension. So as long as that is below 218 for a single person with no other benefits, then you will qualify. But as we've discovered, a lot of people are coming up higher than that.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Appreciate it.
Thank you. No other hands. Dean, thank you. And Sharon, thank you very much for that report. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is an update on the Household Support Fund, and it's a presentation from the Benefits and Financial Resilience Manager, Sharon Church again.
Again, thank you, Chair. Sarah, I think you're going to present for me again, please. Please, thank you. So an update on the Household Support Fund 5 spend and where we are on administering Household Support Fund 6 for you. So Household Support Fund 5, that covered the period the 1st of April 24 through to 30th September 24. We had 284,944 in funding for residents and just under 43,000 for admin funding. Next slide, please. So panel members may remember the time we didn't know whether the fund was going to continue beyond the end of September. And around that same time, we were advised that the cost of living payments were going to be stopping. So we had to consider there being the possibility that more residents would need to access that fund. And as we've been doing since we started administering the fund, we allocated the amount for targeted support and a smaller allocation for open applications. That tends to work quite well for us, and also meets the requirements of the scheme. Let's move on. Thank you. So for targeted support, there was one-off payment for those households who were in receipt of housing benefit and council tax reduction, as long as the resident had under £3,000 in capital, and someone in the household was disabled, a carer, a care leaver, and where they were getting a relief on the council tax account. And again, we wrote to all households who we'd allocated an award to and made up follow-up calls to those who hadn't. Now, when we made those calls, there were numbers who said they had savings of over 3,000, so didn't claim their allocation. And that meant we had some funding left over in September. And as the announcement about the winter fuel allowance had happened by then, we made further payment to the households who had claimed their payment, which was for £130, and that was paid at the end of September. And we're hoping that that is going to allow us to have more funds to help the pensionable age residents who are losing their winter fuel allowance. And we can help those people out of Household Support Fund number 6. So, sorry, if you can move on to the next slide. So the total spend for the scheme was £284,872 sent out to 1,341 households. And of those, 714 awards went to households with children. We had 634 awards to households of pension age, and 108 households were other, and that's usually your single resident or people that don't fall into one of those other 3 groups. But just to confirm, the numbers for those groups don't quite add up because households can fall into more than one group. So that's why you've got a slight disparity there. So next slide, please. So for Household Support Fund 6, the fund covers the period 1st of October to 31st of March 25. We have more funding this time of just under 397,000. And that's higher than previous schemes as there's only one school holiday during this period. So Devon County only need to provide the food vouchers for school holidays for one rather than 2. Could we move to the next slide? It is taking time for us to get that fund out, and that's for a few reasons. One of which is our caseloads continuously changing, and every time we get a new funding grant, it's a new scheme, which can have new conditions attached to it. So we need to go through the guidance that's issued by the Department for Works and Pensions, and we have to also agree the approach with our Team Devon colleagues. So that's the other districts and city councils and Devon County. The guidance for this fund, it was issued late in September, and it was only maybe a day before the scheme was due to start. We also had the changes with the winter fuel allowance ending, which has meant that we need to support a lot more residents. And because of that, and it's a different cohort of people that we need to help, it means we have to write new reports for the system and carry out extra checking to make sure that we're picking up the right people. So we're currently in the process of carrying out that final check of those. And once that's been confirmed, we'll be able to proceed with the final stages, which will be letting the portfolio holder know of the groups that we want to the groups to get an award, sorry. So we're hoping that we're going to be live with the scheme by mid-December at the very latest, but we are working towards being live by the end of November. And of course, we're still running our open applications. So any resident who's in trouble now or struggling to afford anything now can still come and get financial support from us. The next slide, thank you. So under the groups that we're looking at, we're considering are everyone on housing benefit and council tax reduction, and we're looking to support the pensionable age residents who've lost their winter fuel allowance, as well as households where there's disabled carers or care leavers residents, as well as previous serving members of the armed forces. And we'll be confirming amounts and numbers of households that are going to need that support once we've completed those final checks that I was just mentioning. And I think that covers everything for the next slide. Next slide. Sorry. Yeah, it does cover everything. So any questions?
I think I was muted there. Thank you for that, Sharon. Councillor Barlow, can we start with you, please?
Yes, Chair. I just wonder, I know there's a difference in it, but what sort of percentage are you expecting to be different, the claimants to the claimants this time? So, you know, I think I described it wrong, and I was picked up that you've done this before and you should know what you're doing, which I know I was picked up on that point. I know you know what you're doing, but you're spending a lot of time and effort doing this. Are we expecting that 95% of the people are going to be the same? And if so, and I know you've got your rules to do, but would it not be better to give the money to the people we do and then keep the extra money you've got back to deal with ones that, you know, have got away? Would it not be more efficient to do that so that you could get this out earlier?
So the our pensioner caseload, previously on previous schemes, we wrote to about 1,600 people. Not all of those 1,600 took that up. And this time round, we've got, let me just get the number for you. It is about 2,001, that 1,600 was everybody we wrote to. And this time round, we have got on our list 2,061 people. So we've already picked up another 400-500 people, but the disabled people that we helped in the previous scheme weren't those pensioners. So I think there was about 1,800 pensioners or so that we wouldn't have helped normally. So it's a good chunk of people. Sorry, I know that's not very good with percentages, and I can work those out. Once we've got those final lists, I can update members on the proper figures the next panel round and how many were different.
Thank you. Councillor Goodman, come to you now, please.
Thank you, Chair. You know, we've heard some really good stuff that the council have been doing with citizen advice and with Devon, and I just wonder if sometime in December, when Sharon's got the final figures of how many people we've helped, we can put some sort of communication together to tell our residents what we're doing to help those people in need. Because I don't think many people realise what great work we do. Us councillors do, but I don't think our residents appreciate the amount of work that goes in to try to help those people in need. I think a really good communication from the council to our residents, either through the press and also through our own councillor briefing, would be very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. I see the leader slightly nodding there, so I'm sure that that's something that we can arrange.
The leader's twitching, trying to switch his yellow hand on, Chair. I'm failing, but since you queued me up, yeah, funnily enough, Mike, I've got a meeting with our new press head in 1 hour 50 minutes, so certainly would be mentioned that.
Yeah,
but absolutely, we should do that. And all right, and I think since I try not to sort of speak too much in these things, this is a brilliant set of reports in as much as it's obviously deeply depressing what underlies them, but the proactive approach taken from us but also outside as well, Devon Community Together and Citizens Advice Board and so forth, is brilliant. It's no surprise, is it, to any of us that some people are struggling with interactivity with online forms. Try getting a tax rebate. You're not in one. It's impossible. And I think, just as a general note, not to indulge myself today too much, I really worry about AI in this. I really, really worry about it. And I think as long as our council, and I believe it is mindful at the end of the day that people may need to phone somebody up and get an answer, within a few reasonable minutes, we'll be okay. But if ever we get rid of that, I think we'll see the dispossessed because of inability for one reason or other to interact through the internet, where a younger person might be able to do it all on their phone, bang, bang, bang. Somebody else will struggle. But anyway, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks very much. Libby, can I bring you in now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to add, I have got a meeting with our comms team on this. So just to echo what the leader has said, it is on our work plan to do more comms on this work, especially as we're heading into a colder period as well. So yeah, it's definitely on the radar.
Fantastic, thank you. Dean, you wish to come in?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you, Paul, as your local face-to-face advice people. Thank you for saying that. But also, I want to just give you a pat on the back, because we work across the whole of Devon. We've got sort of 7, 8 offices across Devon and Cornwall, and we do work together on a lot of projects. And the feedback I'm getting from the other chief officers is there isn't anyone else across Devon that's working this proactively and this much in the community and out there and sharing things and trying to help people the way that East Devon does. So I think, you do need to give yourselves a pat on the back sometimes. It is a very proactive council, and you are doing great things. So yeah, tell your press office and get it out there.
Well, we've got that quote from Eugene. We'll put that, Dean, in every Christmas card that we put out this year. Too late, we got it on tape. Thank you then.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Martin, come to you now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to ask a quick question. When you were talking about targeted support, you said available, correct me if I'm wrong, to anyone receiving housing benefit and council tax reduction, plus then that further list. Was it that? Did you have to have all of those things on the list, or one or two of them? Thank you.
Yeah, so as long as you're getting council tax reduction or housing benefit, and you've got under 3,000, and you're one of those people. So if you're disabled, you're a carer or previous serving member of armed forces or a care leaver. Unfortunately, we don't have enough to help our entire caseload. If we did, it would be something like £20 or £30. It's too many people for us to give an award that would actually be useful, I suppose. So yeah, it's you've got to fall into all of those categories. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's something I will talk about at parish council meetings, so I just wanted to be accurate about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Sharon, just to echo everyone's thank you and the wider team for all your continued work on this. It's really, really appreciated. No further questions. We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is progress on updating the anti-poverty strategy and connected work. I'll take a short, quite a large breath here. The Assistant Director of Revenues, Benefits, Customer Service, Fraud and Compliance, Libby Jarrett.
Thank you, Chair. I think I am going to be given a shorter job description. You'll be all pleased to know.
I hope so.
Anyhow, I wanted to give you an update on where we are with our anti-poverty strategy, which I'm sure you'll all recall is a key commitment within the council plan in order to deliver against the council's priority of enhancing the quality of life of all of our residents. So the deadline in the council plan is March 25. I know I mentioned at the previous meeting I was hoping to have a draft for this meeting, but that's not been possible due to our resources. But we still plan to meet that March 25 deadline. So work is underway, and I just wanted to give you an update of where we are with that. And really it is about building our learning over the last 4 years. And we've recognised that moving forward, our approach needs to evolve, both strategically and operationally, to further reflect the place alongside the person-centric approach of our strategy. This is particularly important because obviously we've got a large district authority where at least a third of our households are in rural areas, and 2/3 split across several of our towns within East Devon. We know, as Laura mentioned, the barriers of being in a rural area around the cost of essential goods, public transport issues, lack of essential services. So obviously, as Laura highlighted, rural poverty is more dispersed and less concentrated, so it makes it less visible. So we also want to reflect the work that's going as part of our new strategy around the place-based pilot, which Nora talked about earlier, and the value of taking that bottom-up approach and working in a local area to and draw on that knowledge and experience and about how that learning can help inform our strategy moving forward. And we're really excited about that piece of work. And although it might feel that it's been quite slow to get going, it's taken a lot of work and engagement with our partner organisations as well to sort of really sort of bring everyone on board. And obviously we needed to sort of raise this through our own internal governance arrangements as well. So we're hoping that pilot is going to help inform the work of our strategy. And part of that is about working more collaboratively and thinking outside of existing structures, as Nora mentioned. And I think that's one of the key areas that we need to reflect moving forward. You know, transport we know is a big barrier for rural, and how do we think outside of the box in relation to that? And how the business community, and in particular around social value and corporate responsibility, can help inform this work as well. And that's something we haven't considered enough of in the past 4 years, and that's something we need to build on. We're also really high growth district authority where we're potentially going to be building a second new town. And we need to ensure our strategy reflects that as part of that upfront planning, and how we can consider how we could prevent or mitigate against poverty in the planning and design of that. And it's really useful that Sharon is part of that working group to help inform some of that work and how we can make our communities more resilient as we move forward. We've recognised that working collaboratively and building strong partnerships has been really important, and that we've got we've fostered really good partnerships at a lot at operational level, but we need to build on that more strategic level and driving more innovative ways of overcoming system barriers. And it's really good to have Devon County, we're having conversations now with NHS to really sort of build that partnership working. And I feel that there's a real appetite for people to sort of pause and to start looking at how we can do things differently. We've also come out of we're still in it actually, a 4-year period of providing temporary funding through the Household Support Fund, which provides a short-term emergency fix, but it doesn't address the underlying causes. The design of the Household Support Fund is, often only for 6 months. The scheme is often only for 6 months. So your opportunity to consider how we could utilise that funding to provide more sustainable outcomes is just not a part of the design of that scheme. And we've seen since before COVID, if we cast our minds back to sort of pre-2008, where there probably wasn't really sort of food banks known, it wasn't commonplace, and then you fast forward And even pre-COVID, food banks are on the increase. We talk about food poverty, fuel poverty. We're now hearing conversations around hygiene poverty. And they're all symptoms of wider causes of poverty. They're all part of a bigger picture of poverty. And we're seeing demand increasing in those areas. And also mentioned today about negative budgets. So all of these symptoms of poverty, and we need to consider how we can sort of reflect that in our strategy to work better with partner organisations and evolve more strategically on that. So that's just to give you sort of where our thinking is in relation to that poverty, the strategy. And so I think it's come at a really good time, refreshing the anti-poverty strategy, because we can look at building the foundations of the work that have already been accomplished to address key areas, whilst we consider a framework to take us forward with the work we're doing around the person-centric, but also building on the place-based approach at a strategic level. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that. We have done some consultation, so we need to start analysing that and reflecting that. We do want to do workshops. We're hoping to have a workshop in place in the new year to bring poverty panel members together to sort of drill down to this in more detail. So again, be keen to work with yourselves so we can get something in place and deliver against the priority within the council plan by March 25. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Libby. Councillor Barlow, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder, Libby, thank you very much for that, obviously. Councillor Smith earlier said about his project that he's running, that's been trialled now, is showing results, etc. Should we not be trying to put our resources into rolling that out further then, rather than trying to go back and reinvent something else that is going to basically do what that is doing, i.e. getting other groups together to work to solve the problem around a table so that one person can get all the help they need in one go, rather than, again, talking about these things, planning them, trying to get perfection, but that stands in the way of progress. But obviously, as you say, from the ground up, you get progress. And is that not what we're trying to do? And finally, since we've started this, how many people have we got out of poverty? Do we have any sort of record that over the last 5 years we have helped people get out of this so that we're not having to help them anymore? We've helped them get out of this to stand on their own 2 feet. Thank you.
Thanks. Are you happy for me to come back, Chair?
Yeah, Libby, just jump in whenever.
Yeah, no, thank you. Councillor Barlow, I completely accept what you're saying. We do need to, you know, be having a conversation with Councillor Smith about the work we're doing and to make sure that our strategy that was developed 4 years ago, we need to reflect the work that Councillor Smith is doing in their area, and we also need to sort of reflect this sort of place-based approach. So the strategy is about giving us a framework as we move forward. We're not trying to reinvent. I think there is recognition at NHS, at Devon County Public Health, the different departments, about the fact that the systems can create barriers, and it's how we can sort of think more left field around some of that, and how we can sort of break down that to lift people out of poverty. I think the issues are complicated. I think it's very hard to measure because the landscape, the external landscape, has changed massively from when the poverty strategy was, the initial strategy was created back in 2020. We are looking at our metrics using census data, but of course that's already a few years out of date from where we're at. So getting some of those metrics, and you know, people's incomes have been squeezed. We can see that, and that isn't necessarily, you know, that is often government policy, and the factors, the energy prices will have pulled people down into poverty. So it's hard to say that our interventions have lifted. We will have metrics about how we've improved people's financial well-being, but there are lots of other things going on that are externally influencing people's financial well-being.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smith, I see a real hand coming up.
Yeah, I'm struggling to find my electronic hand. Libby, thank you. Yeah, there is definitely a shift I'm noticing, especially even in the last 6 months, about that appetite for working together. A couple of projects that have started to show that very well is the bit of funding I think the housing team had with the IT support. That's now started to go into kind of grassroots level, where previously I think that had been assigned to be its own project and start. And I think the thinking has started to come back to grassroots level as well, which is great. And also some work with the pension credit stuff and trying to reach out, that's started to come to a more grassroots level. So it is slowly seeping through. So, and I know there is generally an appetite for that. My question, Libby, for you is, East Devon is in a really interesting spot, aren't they? Because you kind of sit somewhere between the grassroots stuff on one side and then the other statutory services on the other. What do you imagine our role at East Devon will be to facilitate those conversations and those relationships? Yeah, I'll leave it at that as a question.
I suppose that's what we've got to reflect in the strategy, but I think we're in as a district authority, we're managing key data, or we're managing key schemes around financial support with housing benefit, council tax reduction. We've got the homelessness team. We're delivering emergency funding. So I think we play a pivotal role in this work. I think we can also help to influence as well as we move forward. So that collaboration, and there was a really good diagram on the citizens advice web pages on some research they've done, and about the complexities of energy and accessing support. We also collect a lot of money through council tax income, so we're first hand seeing people who are struggling, and the work we've done there. I mean, the council moved to 100% scheme back in 2021, I think it was, which has as a direct result of the work that we were doing here. They could see the figures, and it was right to change that. So I do think we can play a pivotal role in that support. We see some of the barriers that people are experiencing, and I suppose this is what will be good through this pilot-based work, and with the work that you're doing about how we can overcome some of those system barriers that often make it very difficult for residents to navigate through all of that to become more financially resilient. And that's sort of part of that sort of I suppose that learning as well that we'll be able to take forward as we move forward in the next sort of chapter.
I think as a statutory organisation ourselves, we almost have the clout to be able to send those invites out to the other statutory organisations and say, can we work this out? Because the eastern section of the NHS in our area doesn't quite match up to the eastern region of the district, which is a little bit frustrating, isn't it? But those are the sort of conversations, if we were to kind of sit down as an organisation and say, hey, can we engage DCC, can we engage NHS, and I know that that's a beast in itself, and lots of that we've been doing over the last 5 years, trying to find the pathways and then try to show accountability down the line, because what's been happening up until this point, so that everybody has a good idea, is that more and more of it's just been pushed further and further down the line, and then when pots of money do appear at statutory organisations' doors, they're like, okay, what do we do with this? And you're kind of set with this challenge going, I've got this, I've got to achieve these goals. how do I do it? And the kind of relationships haven't up until this point been available readily to facilitate that. And I think the beauty I found in my role is that it works both ways. So you guys can refer into us as an organisation, but we're also flagging up the people that you desperately want to you desperately want to meet. So there's great value to working together like that, but also the clout that we have as an organisation to be able to engage the other statutory partners.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby, for what you do.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands up. So Libby, can I just thank you for coming today? I need to thank all of the actual presenters. It just highlights all the fantastic work that the council and external organisations are doing for residents in East Devon. And like Councillor Goodman said, we just need to shout about it more. So with that brings our meeting to a close. I'd like to thank everyone for participating. Can I remind all those present that the sporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live, and until then your comments will be heard. Thank you.